All right, some of you are a little familiar with my stories. Usually, I spend most of my time talking about the house that I grew up in. Last month, I told you guys the story about the spotlight tag with what we thought might have been some kind of mimic or Midwest version of a skinwalker, etc. But I kind of want to stick with that theme. I want to get away from the house for a change. I'm going to tell you guys tons of stories about the house, and hell, I already have to some degree in other shows. But I want to keep on the whole things in nature and the mimic thing, but I want to expand this to the woods. So this was a camping trip I took with Michelle. Both her daughters, when are in Brooklyn, and of course their boyfriends, Matt and Ethan. Actually, Jason joined us for that one as well. So my brother Jason was out there at the time. So when we first got there, we couldn't find the damn campsite. It was really weird. So we paid for an electric because the kids have got to have their phones even in nature, unfortunately. But the benefit was I was able to take my projector out there and watch horror films in the middle of the woods. So, it was a nice trade-off. But we get there and we go to the electric side. This number does not exist. So we're like, okay, let's go to the non-electric side. And immediately the kids are like, people are worried because does this mean we suddenly don't have electric? But what somehow happened was we booked the only little section in the non-electric side that actually had electric, and it was a campground section that was built up off an old dry creek bed with an actual creek running beside it. So the way this thing was built up, you could see and hear a lot kind of like around you. Tons of woods, obviously. We're talking Ohio here, so lots of woods out in the camping areas. But there was a weird vibe about this place. There was no one else there in that section at the time when we first got there. There was no one over there. Eventually, there was a person or two, but they were kind of like on down. So instead of having one spot, we kind of had three spots to ourselves, but only had to pay for the one. So that was nice. Kind of spread out a little bit. But I don't know, it was just this strange vibe. Not so much that you felt like something was watching you or someone, but you did. It was just an oppressive, like the air changed in the spot. Like we got out of the car and you could feel a difference between this spot and then walking down the trail a little bit, completely different. Like you could breathe again. Everything was okay. Um, Not too long after we first got there, we started setting everything up and we heard something in the woods. It was, it's midday, so there's people out hiking, from the electric side, out hiking the trails and everything. But it sounded at first like it was a family; they were just out hiking. But then it was like, "Hey, where are you? I can't find you." And we started to get a little worried that okay, this guy. It sounded like mom, a dad, and a couple of girls, like young. Like, okay, shit, are they lost? Like, is there something going on? Um, so we were thinking about going in there, seeing what was going on. We knew this area. Hadn't been there a lot, but, knew it well enough, and it was kinda in a section that you can't really get lost in because the woods don't go on forever, and there's just another trail kind of all around you. Um, but right before we did it, we were starting to go in, we suddenly heard the same voices, but in very different directions, like way farther away than they were when we started walking towards the woods. Far enough away that someone couldn't have moved that fast to get that kind of a distance and that kind of an echo. So we kinda stopped, being the people that me and Jason are and Michelle, and being familiar with things that are out in nature that you don't wanna fuck with, we were like, "Okay, maybe not. Maybe we don't do this today." So we kinda kept an eye on it, and eventually it just stopped. Okay, cool. That was weird, whatever, not gonna deal with that. We set everything up. The first day, everything's great, like, we chill out. I had dropped this giant metal rusted plate on my foot. What we didn't know at the time is I don't remember if it was actually broken or if I think it was just a bad sprain and then a bad, lost a decent amount of blood from a cut. And I've got nerve damage, so when it happened, I didn't realize I'd hurt myself, so I was trailing blood back and forth in the car trying to load it up. And then I walked, like, a mile the first day on this foot. So, after that, I was starting to hurt. The things were tough. The kids were helping me out a lot. We went to the beach, we hung out. We had a good first couple of days, and we started seeing this cat. Now, if you're a camper, usually campgrounds are gonna have a couple cats. These cats just hang out at the campgrounds because people put out food and water for them, and they're generally, they're good to the cats. But this one particular cat was only at this one person's site. Found out this was not this guy's cat. He was just a camp cat, but he was very particular apparently on whose campground he ended up at. Like very particular about it for some reason, and no one seemed to know why. The first night, things got really weird, way beyond just, voices in the woods. The kids decided to go to sleep early, so me and Michelle and Jason decided to start watching Stephen King miniseries. We were watching, the It movies, the original miniseries plus the movies. I think I brought, like, The Stand, Langoliers, like, all kinds of stuff along. And, we were partway into Storm of the Century, and we heard Brooklyn's voice coming from the woods, and we look back, Brooklyn and Matt are in their tent, in the big tent where we were gonna sleep. And then her daughter that was over 18, Winter, a little bit later, we heard her voice. She's in the tent off to the left of us, and we kinda looked over. Her and her boyfriend are clearly in their tents. Here we go with the voices again. Now, usually, if you aren't familiar with mimics and things like this in nature, they try to mimic voices. That's what they do. They mimic voices to lure you out into the woods, presumably to kill you. Typically, they do not run in pairs. They are solitary things. This is something that's well known. You can do your own research. You might see them called mimics, flesh gates. There's all kinds of things, but they're not skinwalkers. That's a very different. They may seem similar in some ways, but they're very different things. Um, these things are stupid generally. Um, I mean, they die like anything else dies. There's nothing super special about them. They're just weird things that occur in nature. Pretty much is the way I was always taught growing up. Um, but the fact that we were hearing the voices now and the boyfriend's voices from different places, sometimes at the same time, we realized, oh, there's two. And then we remembered the campers and thought, okay, well, maybe there was four. And then not only are we hearing our daughter's voices and their boyfriend's voices, I heard Jason's voice. Jason heard Jason's voice. Michelle heard Jason's voice. We're sitting next to each other in chairs. It came off immediately to our left, right down into the actual creek in the woods because it's a lot over the creek and places over there. And then we heard Michelle's voice on the other side of the campsite. So now we are hearing and talking frequently and overlapping at times enough to hear six distinct voices. I feel like if we would have been still and quiet long enough, we would have heard mine. But before we got to that point, we started making noise because we were just watching the movie. It wasn't long. We started making noise. We do what you do for bears and the things in the wood. Hey, I'm loud. Make yourself sound big. Go the fuck away. These things are stupid. But they're stupid when there's one of them is the problem. And the three of us have never heard. Maybe two on occasion, but never more than that. And at least six guaranteed now. That's worrisome because we've got four kids with us. Two of them are over 18 barely. The other two are, like 16 at the time, 15, 16 at the time. And they don't know things like this exist. They don't understand. They've been, that's just something that they didn't have a need to learn growing up. Like living in the city predominantly, things like that. It wasn't a dire need until they were ready to learn about it. We somehow managed to not let them find out about anything that happened on this trip. Let me say this now. They did not know any of this occurred until a couple years after this. So keep in mind that we did our best at all times to keep the kids unaware of everything. And you'll understand as we go along why that was so difficult and it added to the problem that we had. So we're making noise. The sounds are dying down. They're gone for the night. That's it. That's the only experience we have. Again, voices, but much closer to camp and our own voices. We eventually sleep. I don't sleep much anyway because of pain, but like that night I really didn't sleep, but I was in the tent. The next night or the next day we get up again, normal day. We have a good time that evening. I'm gonna skip through some of the boring shit here. We had a good time. We started watching video game movies. We the kids had never seen like the Mario Brothers movie from back in the day, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. So I brought a bunch of those along, and we kind of had that night with them. And then her oldest, Winter, our oldest, and her boyfriend decided they didn't want to do a night hike. And that's one of my big things when I go camping. I like to go night hiking. I enjoy it, and I always have a camera with me. That's just me when I'm out. So we decided that me and Michelle, Brooklyn, Matt, and Jason we're gonna walk around. So we smoked some. We kind of wandered around the woods a little bit. We had a camera going, but we were being tracked. Like we were obviously being tracked by more than one thing. And it wasn't a person because you can see a person. The woods aren't thick there. you could see something move, but it was thin and tall to the point where if you watched it move at all and it stopped, you couldn't even really distinguish it from the woods. But if it was a person with, normal people clothes and shapes, there's no way you couldn't have noticed it. Like, you would have seen if it was a person. So we know we're being tracked at one point in time. And I noticed it about the same time Michelle noticed it, pointed it out to Jason, again, hiding it from the 2 kids that were with us at the time. And I found out he already knew. So we're now realizing this night hike is probably a bad idea, even though these are very used, heavily worn trails, like man-made trails, like very heavily used. Even in the evening, they patrol them. There's people. You'll run into people, except for that night apparently because we ran into only 2 people that night, and they were a couple. They said hi and went on about their way, but the whole rest of the time, you can hear it moving. You can hear just things moving all on the side of you. That night was our first encounter directly with that cat. That cat was a sweetheart. It came right up to us like it knew no strangers and automatically like it was our family. And it followed us all the way back to the campsite. But here's the weird thing. The second that cat joined our group on that night hike on our way back, no rustling in the woods anymore. You no longer had that feeling you were being watched. You no longer heard or saw anything out of the corner of your eye. Nothing. It's a pleasant silence on our way back. That was weird. Of course, the 3 adults noticed that immediately. This cat, there's something going on here, and we're feeding this cat tonight. We're feeding it. We're giving it treats. Anything we can find. We'll go to the store tomorrow and get it shit. Like, we need this cat. If we're staying here, we need the cat, and we can't exactly tell the kids, "Hey guys, there's shit out in the woods. We got to go." You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to get that. Most adults don't even get that until you've been in that situation. And let me tell you, you learn real fucking quick. So we get back. This cat's definitely not leaving. We put out some bowls, gave it some water, gave it some food we had made earlier that day. Another fun fact is that this cat stayed with us the whole rest of our vacation. We were there another 3 or 4 days. No, 3 nights. 3 more nights after that. We were there 3 more nights, and it never left our side. If we were at the camp, it was at the camp. If we wandered on down to the beach, it was at the beach. It didn't just adopt our campsite, it adopted us. And if we were all together, but one of us had to like go down to the bathroom or something like that, it followed whoever split off until that person came back. Like it's like it was hurting us and like keeping us, I guess, I don't know, safe in some way. So the next night, we noticed things have been or the next morning, we noticed there have been things disturbed. Like there was more of like something was walking through the woods where there was no trail and breaking limbs. I mean, anyone that's been out in the woods, you know what that looks like. It's pretty obvious when something forced its way down and basically made a new trail. Um, that was concerning. Again, we tried to hide it from the kids. We moved on. The adults smoked some. We chilled out. And, we went to the beach again. Cat followed. We hung out. We came back in the evening. We cooked. We watched movies. That night was the first major physical side of things, I would definitely say. So everybody's winding down. The cat knows this. We'd offered the cat to come into the tent before if it wanted to. Nope, it was chill. We had a nice big old canopy with a picnic table. It would just chill there and keep an eye on anything. But I started noticing that night the cat, when we'd hear a voice, the cat would go to that part of the campsite. It would just beeline over there and stare, and that voice would go quiet. And this happened like randomly throughout the evening. A couple times here and there, not like frequently, but enough to where like anywhere that cat was, that voice stopped when it happened. So that's when we realized that 100% definitely this was protection. This cat is here for us. It's got some relationship clearly with these things that's hopefully going to stay in our favor. But that night, everybody is getting ready to go to bed, and we're shutting down the projector. The adults are about to go to bed. Kids are already in bed. And earlier that day, we'd also had the first raccoon problem because raccoons are in everywhere down here at every campsite. I'm talking like a dozen or more raccoons. They will walk up while you're eating. One legit came up, sat on the picnic table while we were eating, looked us all in the face, grabbed a hot dog, stuck it in its mouth, took a bite, and then walked off. And we were just sitting at this table, and I'm high as hell, just staring this thing in the face, watching it eat a hot dog. Like, okay, dude, you know what? I'm not even mad. Fucking hot dog, buddy. That's all you. So we're hearing some rustling sounds. No voices. Oddly, no voices that night at all when we were in the evenings. Like none of that. And again, how the kids didn't hear some of at least some of that, I'm not sure. But none of them are exactly were observant at that age. None of them were really observant at all at that age. Some of them not observant now, but some, that's a whole other story. So I'm the last one in. I didn't think I was the last one in the tent, but I was. And here's how I found out. So Michelle's laying down, and we got one of those. We got one of those tents that has three entrances, one on each side, and then a front entrance. And the front one is the nicer entrance, but they've all got like locking zippers, and it's an all season tent. So like this thing is thick. This thing is durable. It's it's not going to get destroyed or broken into very easily at all. I hear something outside, and I think for some reason in my brain that Jason's still outside. That maybe he stopped to go to the bathroom because it sounded like a person walking around, like an actual person this time walking around. So I get out of my air mattress. I go creep by the front entrance because I know that's where he's going to come in, and I'm going to scare the shit out of him just to fuck with him because when that's what you do with family. You scare the shit out of each other sometimes. It's fun. And I'm waiting. I saw that zipper start to move at the bottom. I'm prepping, and someone far over to my right is snoring, and I look over. It's Jason. I look down. The two kids that are in our tent are on the floor. I already know the other two asleep because they were both snorers, so I could hear them from their tent. And I look to my left. There's Michelle, mostly asleep. Like she was still kind of awake. I think because I got up and was moving around, and that's when I realized that we're all accounted for. So I grabbed that zipper and I slammed it down, like I as quick as I could, and I locked it. That little zipper lock thing. Never even used the damn thing, but I figured out how to use that thing real fucking quick. Let me tell you. And I'm holding it, and there's this flap on the inside that I can unzip, and it becomes a screen, and I can actually look out there and see what's there. And I started to do that. But I saw. Imagine if my finger were this long, that long, and like a third of that width, but kind of like that at the end. That's what I saw looped into the zipper. I was stunned because again, I'd been in physical contact with a couple of these over the years, but never anything so brazen as to walk up to a tent that clearly six people are inside with two more in a tent next to it and open a zipper. That's not normal behavior. You can do all the research you want. You will never find any of this as actual normal behavior for these things. It's not what they do. They're dumb, but they're not that fucking dumb. Unless they're hungry. They're hungry. And they're hungry enough. Any animal, anything of nature, even humans, will go to a lot of great lengths to eat. So I'm not gonna lie, I almost shit myself just right there in that moment, seeing that finger, realizing what was happening. I thought we were pretty much all gonna die at that point in time. Not again that these things are smart or difficult to do anything to because you can kick the shit out of them, but I remembered there was at least six, and those odds aren't so good. And I'm the only one fully functional and awake. So I just held that zipper. I sat there for a long time, and I just held that fucking zipper until I heard that meow. Second I heard that meow, its finger was gone. I heard very light footsteps because when they move, they're so light you really have to pay attention because they're so un- unbelievably thin and there's just no density to them. They make almost no sound when they move unless you know what to look for or unless they've stumbled or unless there's apparently six of them tracking you in the woods. Then it makes a difference. But generally one at a time. And there had to have been only one because I didn't hear anything else, just that. And when I was pretty sure it was gone, sat there, took a deep breath, and I realized someone's gonna have to stay up. Someone's gonna have to watch the campsite. Someone's gonna have to basically sit out there with that cat all night at this point in time, and we'll try and leave tomorrow. We can't. This is it's gonna be dangerous if we don't get out now with how they're acting. So I left the tent, sat out there a little bit for the cat, and I went. I figured I'll sleep in the car. I, my plan was to sit there in the car, and if I heard anything, to start slamming on the horn, obviously, and flashing lights at the tents. And if nothing happened, I'd fall asleep when the sun came up. So I did. I stayed up all night. Nothing happened the rest of the night. The cat was mobile. It hopped up on the hood. Again, offered to get in the car. It wasn't interested, but it sat on the hood, like on the side of the car that I was passenger seat, kind of dozing by the time sunrise hit. I finally went to sleep. And they woke me why, made up I don't remember what story I told the kids, honestly, about why I slept in the damn car. I think it's because I wanted to smoke and I couldn't smoke in the tent and I fell asleep. That's probably what yeah, he's pointing at me. That's what I told him. Um, but of course, the adults I took aside and explained to them what had happened and the concern. And the kids really did not want to leave because this was their last vacation to start school. They were going back to school. And to the point where, like, right in the middle of this vacation, we had to take a break from our vacation for like half a day to go over there to register them for school so they can meet their teachers and then come back camping. And luckily, we were only about like 30, 40 minutes away from their school. So, and they were starting high school. So that was like an even bigger deal we had to deal with halfway through. But they did not want to go home. Michelle knew that, and she said, "What can we do? Is this so dangerous that we can't handle this on our own? To give them again time to be kids, time to grow up, have fun camping." And we thought about it. We sat down, and the only way to do this is things got to be monitored. Obviously, we want to loop this cat into the situation, but you can't give a cat commands on a good day. The guy definitely not. So we just figured at least one or two people up rotating if we needed to every night because during the day nothing bad seemed to happen. And that held true the whole time. During the day, the occasional voice or the movement that you could tell, but no coming out into camp. And that's pretty traditional for these things. Like they're not seen often, and usually by the time you see them, it's too late and it's deep in the woods. Coming out like that at night was one thing, but we were pretty confident again, and we were right about them not coming out during the day. So again, normal day for the kids as far as they're concerned. We went into town. We got some little Caesar pizza because I like good trash pizza now and then. You got to have the good trash pizza. Let me some more Mountain Dew. We went back, again, had a good camp. And the kids, I was teaching the boys about how to cut, firewood. So, of course, them being kids, they went and got the biggest dead tree that I've ever seen two kids carry in my life and drug it back to camp. It was impressive. But then I said, "Good job, guys. How you going to cut it?" And they both looked at me. I didn't bring an axe for firewood because we brought some firewood. We had some, but they wanted a bigger fire. All I had was a hatchet. So these two poor kids, and Matt, again, people have seen him before on the show. Matt's like 6'3", 6'4". He's our gentle giant. Like he's huge. He is enormous. Like, but built, and he's over there with the hatchet. And it was one of those survivalist hatchets too. So the actual handle for it is like braided cord, not like a solid handle. So he's over there hacking away. He'd get tired. The other kid would come in. Ethan, he'd start hacking away at it. It took them literally probably 9 or 10 hours of just frequently like trading in and out and taking breaks to cut this thing into enough usable pieces. And even then, some of the pieces were so huge still. We just made them into the bottom of the fire to get the coals going, basically, and just put chunks in places. Plenty of newspaper, obviously, starters. Had to get some starters for that shit too. We had to go to the store and get some more because yeah, there was no way those were going to burn without help. But it was impressive, and they busied their whole day with that. The girls, were watching, sitting around impressed. Their girls because I'm pretty sure that's why they were doing it in the first place. Yep, I see that. Yeah, I see the grin over here. That's definitely why they were doing it in the first place. And us adults are just watching, shaking our heads, smoking, of course, just having a good time. Almost such a good time we almost forgot about the bullshit in the woods. Watched a couple movies. I think at that point in time we were officially finishing up Storm of the Century because the kids had gone to sleep. And once again, this time we got a plan. I'm staying up. I don't sleep a lot, but Jason was going to take half the night too, just to kind of back me up. And Michelle stayed awake in the tent for the first half of the night in case I needed to pass a message. But it was the same. You see it, and things get crazy. You turn on the headlights, you flash them, and you start honking the horn. That's get everybody up into the cars. So we had our backup plan. We knew what to do. The cat was still there. Again, like I said, cat stayed the whole time. The cat's still there. And it was a little bit more aggressive that night. Even when we were watching Storm of the Century, the voices were coming out more often. And let me just tell you, at one point in time, we were pretty sure 10, 11 separate sources of not even just that. Cat sounds we heard. And it was not a cat. We heard other animal sounds. We heard sounds from other campers that had left, like, the night before, which they were also trying to mimic and imitate. People whose voices we'd clearly heard, so we just, if we weren't who we were and hadn't had this experience already on this trip, we would have not never known that it wasn't those campers. Oh, yeah, 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 I'm getting to that. Um, One of the weirdest voices they did, and this will tie back into when we first got there, super weird. This one lady showed up in a truck with a tent, just, like, kind of affixed to her car. She showed up, she was there for 3 hours, running her car the entire time, and she just leaves. But you could hear her talking on the phone the whole time, and here's the weird thing, when it mimicked her voice, it mimicked not just her voice, but if you listen hard enough, you could actually hear the other conversation from the phone being mimicked too. That was another really weird one that we heard. But there were all kinds of just very, I don't know, man, odd people. There were some odd people out there camping with us at that time. No one that we actually physically talked to, like, really, like, actually really spoke to, but voices you kept hearing even after you watched them take their tent and drive away. Hold on, I'm being interrupted 1 second. Oh, yeah, yeah. The according to the campground, that person, they had no record of them even camping there, nothing. So they're not even sure where that person came from or where they went or anything, and it's the kinda campground that stops you the moment you pull in to verify that you're there, that you've paid or you're about to be escorted in to pay now kind of a situation, like, it's a private campground, so they're pretty on top of things there. Um, so we get to that a crazier night because this cat is darting everywhere tonight. The voices are more frequent, so that cat is maybe sits down for at best 10 minutes before it's got to get it back up again and go to another side like the camp to make the voices stop. But the voices are so frequent again. Every 10 minutes, this cat's getting up, going somewhere. Sometimes every 5 minutes. They were getting closer to camp that night because the voices obviously sounded much closer, which isn't that hard to pull off in the woods because there's an echo. But you can tell proximity when it's close enough. And the way it got dark there at night, with the way that old creek bed and the trees around it, like, I wouldn't say farther away than 10 feet around our camp in any direction you couldn't see past. It was that dark. And that's about how close we started hearing them that night. And Jason went ahead and went to sleep. The kids had all been asleep for hours. Michelle stayed up for the first half of the night. It wasn't too bad. The cat's still darting, but not as much. It seems like it's slowing down. But I start to see an arm, uh, part of a profile for like a split second, like from the car a little bit. By the time she's falling asleep, Jason leaves the tent. He comes in, gets in his car. It's parked right next to mine. We were out in the window. We're talking, smoking a cigarette, passing him a bowl, and just talking, while we're watching stuff. Calm down again for a little bit. Then Jason passes out. And I'm still up, and two of them, like, clearly walk into camp. They walk into camp. I made some kind of sound. I cleared my throat. I coughed. Something, whatever it was that I made, they stopped and they looked right at me. They looked at each other. They looked back at me, and they just kind of dipped back out. And that was it. But there were two physically now. So not only had we heard at this point in time like 10 or 11 of them, but we've now physically seen two at the same time. So even if they're throwing voices or something, physically there's at least two. Well, before the end of the night, we physically saw them emerge again, this time with two more in a different part of the tent. At this point in time, we got maybe an hour left until sunrise. Nothing happens again. Sun comes up. So now we're on our last day there. We're trying to make it an even bigger blowout. Spend longer at the beach today. Like, really where the kids at. Have a really good time. Laugh, joke, everything we're going to do. We're leaving all out at our campsite. So we have a blast all day. Again, probably one of the best days camping out of all. They were all great days, but this one was like a special day for them because it was their last day of freedom, pretty much. They started school, I think, like a couple days after that. So this really was the last thing for them for the year. It was almost a saying goodbye to their childhoods for the younger ones in a way because they were starting high school. And I'm sure you guys know what that was like. So we again had this great day. We're at the fire. The kids are asleep again. This time, the darting into camp is happening within 20, 30 minutes of the kids going to sleep, and all three adults are out there watching movies. You're seeing this cat now just constantly up and moving. This cat does not sit for a second. It barely goes and eats and drinks. It's just constantly all around, just walking in a circle, stopping, darting back and forth. Patterns at this point in time because of how quick and how often it's running back and forth. The three of us are starting to see them physically creep into camp a little more, a little more, a little more. At one point in time, they're all creeped enough into view. We're at 14 now. 14. At that point in time, had we wanted to leave, by the time we woke up the kids, it was already too late. We knew it. Still think they were too dumb to know it, despite their numbers. But had they wanted to in that moment, they could have ended our lives. They could have drug us out in the woods and ripped us to pieces, eaten us, whatever the fuck it was going to do. They could have all done that. They had the numbers easily. But for whatever reason, at the same time, this cat lets out this awful yell, a yell that I've never heard any cat ever. This sound, and it's a sound I still think about sometimes because it was such a. I can't even describe it. I'm an author and I don't even have words for this fucking sound. But every one of them stopped and looked at this cat, and at the same time dipped back out into the shadows that surrounded the camp. We were scared shitless, but we knew they were close. What do? You wake them up, you make enough sounds to know that their food is leaving. They're going to come out. I mean, any animal, human, anything that's that hungry and knows their food is about to leave is going to do something about it. So we had to stay till sunrise. That was our best option. Again, they had never come out during the day. We had no reason to believe they would, even though they defied other previously believed facts. This one was holding true. So we could just stay here, quiet, go about our normal shit, and just hope for the best. Now, this night, Michelle really didn't sleep at all either. She was in the tent. Um, the two oldest would refuse to sleep in their tent. Nothing we could do without telling them what was going on would get them to sleep in that tent. So we just had to monitor better. So me and Jason stayed outside the whole night, both up, both kind of walking around with this cat. Michelle stayed awake with the two youngest in the big tent just to get ready to if we had to abandon our shit, we were going to abandon our shit. We didn't care about our belongings. None of us had anything there that was that important. And anything we always kept locked in the trunk of the car anyway, so we were good. And we made a big show that day too before they went to bed about anything that was external in the camp. We were packing it all up. Just we told them to make it easier tomorrow. Most people don't. If you've never been camping, you take your shit down on the last day when you leave. That's that's how it works. But we made up reasons to take it down early to be prepared. So again, the first couple hours, voices. Me and Jason walking around once in a while, checking in with Michelle because she can hear things from behind the tent that we're not hearing because she's closer to the end of our camp on this side. So we would constantly just walk around with the cat, come back, check on her, see what she heard, go to that side, keep an eye out, this for a bit. And obviously it was tiring, so Jason and I went to the cars. Jason fell asleep. Uh, I'm not a driver, so I wasn't doing any of the driving. So our drivers kind of needed a couple hours of sleep. So I had Michelle and Jason at least try to get a little bit before we had to drive all the way. We had to take us home in Hamilton, then drive another hour in the opposite direction just to get back home again with all our stuff. So there was potentially going to be more than one trip if we didn't plan this out intelligently. So now I'm the only one awake. Everything seems fine. I don't know why, but suddenly things are dead. The cat's not moved off the hood of my car in probably 45 minutes, probably. I'm starting to feel good about it. Maybe that was the worst. Maybe we're good. And then I passed out. I was exhausted again between what I'd done on my foot before we leave and walking on it constantly, swimming in lake water with a wound was also not smart. And just not being, I was miserable. Somehow my body just decided it was done. So I passed out, went to sleep. I woke up because my car door opened. It opens. The light comes on in the car, makes a ding ding, that fucking sound. Drives you nuts. I have my eyes and I look over. I'm thinking it's Jason or Michelle checking on me, something like that. No, I am face to face with this one of these fucking things on the other side of the window from me because it had just opened the car door. Its hand was on the door. The door was open that much. And in the process of opening, I grabbed that door handle. I pulled the door shut. I hit the lock. I rolled the window up. It was like only cracked that much real quick. And it stood there and put its hand with again, elongated fingers right on the glass and just leaned in, stared me right in my fucking face. And then it looks over. So when anyone in front of you or thing or whatever looks to the side, it's going to be our instinct. The history of mankind to always also look over to the side. So I look over. Nope, there's about 17 or 18 if I had to do a quick guess. There's multiples surrounding the tent that Michelle is asleep in with the kids. There's a couple over there with the other two kids in their tent. And two on my car, three around Jason's car. So I hit the horn. I flashed the lights. Jason woke up, hit the horn. He flashed the lights. And Michelle woke up. They all stopped, like in mid motion, what they were doing, like in awkward like positions, like some in the processes of walking. So one foot wasn't even on the ground, and they just stopped. And they looked at me. A couple of them looked at Jason, but then they all started getting closer to the car that I was in. And that cat wakes up. Again, that yowl. And they all stop. And you think they're going to go, okay, they're going to go back into the woods, but they don't. They only move about 5 feet back. But at this point in time, they're surrounding the car. But now they're not paying any attention to me. They're just paying attention to this cat. Just the cat. Cat gets up. Again, its yell sound makes the yell sound again. Now it's not that effective. So I start making all the noise I can make. I'm banging on the window. I'm hitting the horn repeatedly. I'm flashing the lights. Jason takes cue. He starts doing it. Michelle comes out of the tent. She starts banging pots and pans together, like because the flap next to her on the right side was right by where we had our big bins that we had packed up full of the dishes. So all she literally had to do is just unzip, reach out, and grab. So we're making all the noise we can make. They're now starting to pay less attention to the cat. They're starting to pay more attention to me, to Michelle in the tent, to Jason over in his car next to me. They're listening to all this sound that we're making. And then they get up and they start to move away. And that cat's starting to get more aggressive now and starting to run at them with different groups. And the closer it gets, the more they jump back and back off. Like this thing is in this single battle, like while we're distracting it, to just run these things off. And it took a good 15, 20 minutes. By the time it was done, I was out of the car making noise with anything I could find. Jason was out of the car making noise with anything he could find. Shell was out of the tent making noise with anything she could find. And we were just surrounding this cat. It moved, we moved. And every movement we made pushed these things farther to the other side, to the creek. When the last one was farther than we could see in the shadows, we stopped, took a breath. We came to the center of camp. Sunrise hit about 15, 20 minutes after that. We stayed awake. We packed what we could quietly, what was left to pack at that point. And then when the kids woke up, we took down the tents and we got the fuck out. We all went to our respective homes at the time. But here's the weirdest thing about this. This campground, it's only like 30, 35 minutes away, probably a little bit less from where I'm living now, but at the time, like, maybe 40 minutes away. And Michelle and I used to drive around a lot. And a lot of people, I'm sure, have played this game. You just decide, I've got to tank a gas tonight. I got nothing better to do. Let's just drive around and look at weird shit. You go one way for a while, you ask your passenger, the passenger asks the driver, right or left. And you just pick a direction, you drive in it. You see what's out in the world. One of my favorite pastimes until around this time, no matter what paths we chose, and even when we got ourselves intentionally lost, because that's the fun of the game is to get yourself so lost you don't know where you are and don't use GPS, and then you figure out what turns you need to make. Again, as long as you got a full tank of gas, don't be a moron to get yourself back out from being lost again. It was fun back then. But we always ended up back at those campgrounds. We would be in 2 cities away and swear we didn't drive that much. And we'd be pulling into the front gates of that campground. And this went on for a couple months. We stopped playing the driving game. Then the dreams started, where just about every night after a certain point, one of the three of the adults, because we all lived together at the time, would say, "Hey, I dreamt about the camp. Oh, I did too. What was your dream about?" And it was literally it was like a calling because what we remembered from the dream more than anything else, it wasn't what was there. It wasn't who we were with in the dream. It was the feeling that we were being called to something, that we were being called back. We never figured out if it was from the cat, the mimics, or something older. And this was the weird feeling we got the whole time we were there too. What if there were so many of them together in one place? Because again, these are stupid looking things. What if they weren't the ones in charge? What if there is something out there, not just in our woods, but every wood, revolting against us, the people that have destroyed, the forests, who have ran these things out, who have ran other things out? What if in some way these things and things like them were gathering? And that was the last time I went camping. And I miss it. I think about it. I even bought a new tent. I've not used it yet because every time I think about going camping, every time I'm about to bring it up, I'll have a dream that night, and I'll get that indescribable urge to go back. But now it's not. Let's go back to the campgrounds. The more I've had that dream, and I still have them, and this was 3 years ago. I I still feel this place, and every time I have the dream now, it doesn't feel like I'm being called to camp. It feels like I'm being called home.